and aims to demystify topics and themes within the scholarship of teaching and learning. Podclass is produced by the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning within the Settle Inc.'s Teaching Innovation Studio. We're excited to have you with us, and we hope you enjoy today's episode. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Podclass, where we explore the topics and themes in teaching and learning, and of course the scholarship of teaching and learning, especially in higher education. I'm your host as always, Mark Garcia, and today we are exploring an intriguing but somewhat confrontational topic of using AI in research. And the theme of today's session is AI-powered research. How is artificial intelligence transforming things like academic writing, the research process and design, and the way that we interact with data? Do we analyze, do we synthesize, draw conclusions based on the AI? Well, today we'd find out. And to help us discuss that this morning, we are joined by Dr. Rajini Haraksingh of the Department of Life Sciences.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Haraksingh. We are so happy that you accepted our invitation.
Thank you for having me. I'm on sabbatical this year, so I have time to accept your invitation.
Well, that works out well for us and, of course, for the audience. And this morning, we are going to, first of all, begin with a little bio of Dr. Haraksingh. She is a human geneticist and a lecturer in biotechnology right here at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. She's leading research efforts combining genomics, precision medicine, and AI to improve health outcomes in Caribbean populations. She has 20 years experience in cutting-edge research at MIT, Cambridge, Yale, Stanford, and now at the UWI, developing and implementing technologies for studying the human genome. And of course, she's training the next generation of bold and creative Caribbean scientists. I like that.
That's the one I'm very excited about.
And it's going to set the tone for today. Now, I see that some of your contributions included fields of various human diseases such as cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. You focus on applying technologies for improving diagnostics and therapeutics in the Caribbean population, for both NCDs and rare diseases. And of course, you have a whole long list of accolades and educational accomplishments. 2 bachelor's degrees, a PhD in genetics from Yale, a postdoctoral training at Stanford in genomics and personalized medicine. Dr. Haraksingh, again, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we are eagerly anticipating what today's discussion is going to hold. Of course, for those joining us, we look forward to any questions that you may have, contributions. You could feel free to chime in using our chat room, and we would, as far as possible, answer your questions. So let's talk AI. Every conversation now is AI. Sometimes you don't know if you're speaking to a human or if you're speaking to AI. So it's everywhere. Now, it's becoming a hot topic. It is a hot topic since it's, I would say, thrust into the academic environment, especially for research. As soon as we hear AI, we think of the other AI, academic integrity. Artificial intelligence versus academic integrity. How, though, is AI going to be used in a way that is responsible and respects the boundaries and the limits that are given by academic integrity is something that we're going to discuss today, Dr. Haraxin.
Yeah.
So you know what we're going to try to do? We're going to discuss it perhaps through the steps of the research process.
Sounds good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan. So let's say we're starting with the research question. So we first, be it a graduate student or a lecturer, and we're beginning our research. And we know the field. We already are, to some extent, an expert in the field. Let's say I am doing, let's use your example, something in human genomes. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
And specifically with respect to diabetes.
Okay.
How do you think I could begin?
So, first of all, I think as an expert in the field, I think this might be different for, say, a career academic versus a postgraduate student. So, someone who is, well read, well versed in their field, and this is their niche field, I think anybody who is working at the cutting edge of any field is going to know what are the main open questions in that field, right? And what are the next sort of obvious things to solve in that field. But for a postgraduate student, for example, coming into a field, that may not be so obvious. So for the example that you asked me to talk about, so it's globally like genomics is revolutionizing healthcare. But we don't have much data about Caribbean populations and about the diseases that affect us the most. Diabetes was one of them. So actually, one of the most obvious things I did was start a project looking at diabetes of Caribbean populations. But I think research is really concerned with like figuring out where the knowledge gaps are, and then we have to try to fill those in.
Yeah.
But the knowledge gaps and what is valuable to one person may not be valuable to another person.
That's very
So depending on the population, the situation, the environment, we might want to ask very important questions for a niche area. And I think that means that we need to both survey the digital landscape, but we also need to be well aware of what is all the information that is not represented digitally. So I think at this point, asking AI questions may be helpful, but it also may not necessarily identify the most valuable knowledge gap that we're trying to figure out.
And or
that we need to figure out.
Yeah. And since you raised that topic, I don't want our listeners to think that this is a marketing session for AI, right? Now, we are saying that there is responsible use, and as long as there's responsible use, obviously there's irresponsible use.
Yeah.
So AI does have its limitations. And
Absolutely.
quite frankly, there is at this point in time an obvious inherent bias in using AI to some extent. We know that for AI to work and for those platforms, those models to be trained, currently it's trained by all of the data from the global north.
Yeah.
So we are already dealing with something that is not Caribbean in essence. For example, with the diabetes research that you want to look at. So that's just a consideration, folks, that we want to keep in mind, that there are some inherent biases that we need to be aware of, acknowledge, and find ways to work around or work through. That greater north, global north influence is one of them. But let's go into an AI tool that I came across that actually was interesting in using it as a form of debate.
Okay.
So I came across this tool. It's called HeyGen. And I'll be honest with you, the first time we demoed this thing, people were freaked out. So HeyGen is like, let's say we put a face to one of those GPT models. And now on my screen, I'm speaking to a face, and I'm not using text, but I'm using my microphone. So it's a full-fledged conversation.
Okay.
And I wanted to try with HeyGen to see what the concept would look like. So I asked HeyGen in my case, hey, I am doing a podcast on ethics in research. It wasn't obviously not for this one. On ethics for research. some of the considerations that we must count for before proceeding. And at that time, I think it was a female voice, female character. And the person spoke and said, okay, so Mark, and they use your name, of course, whatever you information you supply. And I was actually able to have I would say about a 7-minute conversation with this avatar.
Yeah.
And it was very insightful because while it was generating, it made me think because I had a broad topic, but I couldn't quite figure out exactly where I was going with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a useful tool from the outset. So I would say if you have your topic, but you don't know exactly, you haven't finalized your questions.
Yeah.
I think it's a useful tool for postgrad students or for experts in the field, the lecturers or academic researchers, that they can use in narrowing down.
Yeah.
And of course, the thing with AI is that AI makes the long traditional process of research shorter. It doesn't devalue it.
Yeah.
It just increases the time.
And the efficiency.
There we go. So we have more time for the higher thinking tasks.
Yeah.
So the critical thinking, the synthesis of the all of the literature, the analysis of the data and the findings, that is something that we have more time for because we're not spending all the time running around trying to figure us out. We're taking weeks trying to figure out the topic and the questions. It's not like that
That's
again.
interesting because, having conversations with people is a great way to figure out where the gap in the research is. And so this sounds like just another avenue to have a conversation about a general topic, right?
It is. It is. And of course, again, keeping in mind that bias of...
Absolutely. Yeah. But you know what? I mean, maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. But the other important thing is it's going to be really fast. You're not going to waste a lot of time on it. So you may as well try it.
Yep. So I can tell you, like I said, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
That was my debate with it and it worked. Now, you mentioned something there about one of the key things is finding gaps within a field. And in keeping with that, I don't know if you've ever heard about this tool. Now, keep your ears peaked, listeners, because we're going to be discussing different tools that could help in different situations and stages throughout the research process. It's called Connected Papers. Have you ever heard about that?
I've heard of it. I haven't tried it as yet.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's not marketing, but Connected Papers I've found is, and what it does is it's like it's an interface just like your GPT. So you go in and you prompt it, you tell it something that you're looking for. So human genomes with respect to what we're using? Diabetes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we say in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And what Connected Papers does is that it now begins to search for literature on that topic.
Okay.
What I appreciate about the tool is that it is not like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or the others where it's going to have a lot of room for hallucination. And that's simply because it's using Semantic Scholar as its database.
Yeah.
So trusted.
Yeah.
Yeah, trusted, more or less. And after we've done the search in Connected Papers now, it would give us a list of articles with the dates of publication of these articles. And it would show us a graph. And it's actually being displayed here. We have the graph of the different papers that Connected Papers has found for us. And we are able to select an article from that graph. Now, the thing with the graph, the bigger, the larger the node of the paper indicates the frequency of citations that paper has to it.
Yeah.
So it's already being able to tell you who are the key influential speakers in the field of whatever it is, diabetes, human genomes. It's going to tell you who are the key foundational ones, but the distance between the nodes also shows you where there is room to close certain gaps.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a bird's eye view of what is happening in the field.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting.
It sounds interesting, but I hope we could see now how we can use it. And of course, for now, it is a tiered pricing system. So it's free to some extent, with limits.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pay for it, but we can use it with the limitations. And in the graph as well, something I omitted was that it is zoned according to specific details. So if I'm looking at diabetes, if I did not put it in the Caribbean, it would give me one part of the map that has the diabetes research from Europe, let's say, then probably Caribbean if the data was already published. Already published. So how does it sound?
It sounds interesting. I think I'll give it a try. But I do have to say, it sounds like something that, we don't know if we can trust it all as yet, because it sounds like it will definitely amplify those papers that have been cited a lot, and they'll just keep getting cited even more.
Exactly.
It might be a shortcut, or people might take it as a shortcut to not read the additional papers that have not been cited as much.
Yeah.
And that may not necessarily be the right thing to do in the field. So we have to take everything with a grain of salt.
Exactly.
But that said, it does sound like it can very efficiently help us kind of very quickly pick out what are the key bits of literature we need to be surveying.
Yeah.
And also perhaps where some gaps might exist. But whether those are the gaps that you're interested in studying, or whether those are the gaps that our population needs us to study are two different questions, right?
Yeah. So it's coming back, as you say, you cannot remove the human element.
Yeah.
Because you would know what is your need for your niche.
Yeah.
So we can't AI, it's responsible use.
Absolutely.
So I would quite frankly say that we're in a kind of a pre-literate state of using AI in research. And it is sessions like these that would build the skill set and the knowledge on what is there and how it could be used properly.
Yeah.
How it could be used. So what I tend to do is I would compare tools.
Yeah.
So similar to connected papers, there's another one that's called Research Rabbit. And I'm sure a lot of persons have heard about this. Now, this uses Semantic Scholar as well.
Yeah.
Now, both Research Rabbit and connected papers, they give you the articles with URLs, DOIs, so that you know it's nothing made up. You can click on it, verify your links, verify that it's an article from a peer-reviewed journal, of course, because of Semantic Scholar being its database. But again, it's up to you as a student or the researcher to actually read the article.
Yeah.
To read the article. So you have these...
If only the AI could read for us.
No, we don't necessarily want that. Because to some extent, it is reading.
It is reading. I know.
There are a lot of tools that do the actual reading.
It's so hard to get our students to read these days.
And I think that's part of it. So in getting them fully AI literate in sense of responsible use, they surely know these tools.
Yeah.
But we want them to be able to use the tool responsibly. So Research Rabbit similarly gives this visual layout. It gives us the authors, the work in the subject matter, and it also provides a timeline option.
Yeah.
Now, what I like about the timeline is it kind of helps you in your literature review when you're stating the underlying themes.
Yeah.
Who are the foundational ones? So you think of the older theorists, and then you could create, of course, if we read, for us as a student or a researcher, we would be able to put together the pieces and know what has happened as time has progressed.
Yeah.
So those are two, connected papers and Research Rabbit. Research Rabbit. Now, we're still within, so we've done the debate with HeyGen.
Yeah.
We could have used as well ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Gemini, Copilot to do that debate, because the debate stage is just pure text.
Yeah.
We're just bouncing off ideas, as you said, it's conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if there were two Rajinis in life sciences, I'm sure they would speak to each other before they go on to do some kind of research.
Yeah.
Because they're both knowledgeable in the field.
But actually, sometimes when we speak to somebody who is not in our field, that's when we get to the really profound questions, because they don't know anything about what we're doing or why we're doing it. So it really challenges us in a different way than speaking to a subject matter expert.
Yeah. And it's funny that you raised that, because what the literature is proposing is that AI in research is opening the door for more interdisciplinary research. And I find that to be profound. and again, as we get to the full literacy stage, or where we should be, that would be some output that we could look forward to.
Yeah.
I think.
I actually think a lot of genius ideas come from looking at the same problem from a completely different lens. And that's, that happens a lot in interdisciplinary research. So sure, if this is going to accelerate that.
Pivot into that. So let's just talk about another of those tools. So we've done the topic, the question, and we're doing the literature search. So we've started using connected papers, Research Rabbit, and then there is one that's called Consensus. Consensus is a similar interface, but with this tool, we could either enter a broad topic, or if we have already done the debate with AI and got a question, of course, if we are a student, gone through it with our supervisor, if we are doing a research collaboration as academics, decided on it.
Yeah.
And then we could go a little further now with Consensus and we ask it some of the questions. And what Consensus does is that it gives you a result page similar to Connected Papers and Research Rabbit, showing the relevant papers in the field, in the topic, and again, providing the URLs and the DOIs. Again, Consensus draws from Semantic Scholar. And what is interesting with Consensus is that at the top of the page, if you ask it the question properly, it gives you a consensus report. Now, what that consensus report shows is where there is agreement and disagreement within the literature that it has pulled up.
That's interesting because that always is those points of contention are often where entirely new avenues of research in a field
That's where the gaps
evolve.
come up.
Yeah.
That's where we find the gaps. And I always remember a colleague of mine saying a good literature review, in his belief, was always a paragraph with 3 different sources. One pro, let's say, one con, and one who is outside.
Yeah.
And it would give you a different perspective, as you said, of the topic and then identify the gap. So we've discussed 3: Connected Papers, Research Rabbit, and Consensus. There are more.
I'm sure there are.
There are more. And we're going to discuss 3 more. But we're going to take a pause first of all.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll discuss those additional tools. And we're going to see how they can be used again through the literature search, literature review. And then we're going to have a very interesting highlight from Dr. Haraxing on data analysis using AI. So we look forward to it. We hope you could stay with us. Again, keep in mind that with all of these tools that we would be discussing today, you would have to do your due diligence. You would have to try them out. We are not saying that we're just going to copy and paste. That is not AI, responsible use of AI. It's the tools that we are highlighting is just to simplify the lower thinking tasks of finding literature and collating literature within a theme or a topic. So when we get back, we'll hear some more. Dr. Haraxing, thanks so much so far.
Sounds good.
And I look forward to the rest of it.
All right.
So, welcome back, folks. I can't say part 2, but we're continuing our discussion of the use of AI, the responsible use of AI in research, how AI can power research simply, not being the researcher, but being the research tool or the research assistant.
Research assistant, I love that framing.
The research assistant. And I hope...
Efficient research assistant.
Aha. So we've discussed HeyGen. We've mentioned some of the GPT models, and we've discussed connected papers, Research Rabbit, and what was the last one? Consensus. And we're just going to touch on 3 of the others that could help us in framing literature searches and literature reviews. There's a tool called Elicit. Elicit. Again, straightforward AI interface. We have a search bar. We put in our topic, we put in our question, and it gives us a summary of the top papers. Now, I think in the free version, it's like 4 to 8 you would get. And in the paid for version, it's more than 8. But it would list, again, the URLs, the DOIs, because it's pulling from Semantic Scholar. What I like with Elicit, though, is Elicit gives an abstract of each article. And if it's not the actual abstract, it's the summary of the article. So, like you said before, if only AI could read for us. And this is one of those that could quickly read and run through what are the main themes of an article, what is the viewpoint of the speaker.
Yeah.
Is he pro, con, or neutral on the topic?
Okay.
So we're thinking of these tools while we mention them. We're not going to spend much time on them, but we want you to know of them and their uses. And I'm sure that while we are discussing it, you're also thinking of how your graduate students might be able to use it and make the process easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing literature reviews takes a lot of time. And especially now that everything is on the internet, the benefit is everything is available. But, the challenge is that you end up being inundated with information. You have to figure out what are the most trusted bits of information that you should actually be considering. And that can take a long time. On top of that, the AI is only going to give you output from digital information.
Exactly.
So whatever you're studying you might actually find the answer in non-digital libraries, an actual library, or in conversation with other people, in interviews, in collecting physical data from the world. So we have to kind of use it for what it might be good at, and then be very hyper aware of what it's not good at. Yeah.
So we're definitely saying that AI is not going to be our sole researcher.
Yeah.
You could remember the good old days of spending weeks in the library. I remember long ago you have a spot in the library because you're always there at that time for the entire day sometimes.
Yeah.
And those elements are not necessarily going to disappear because a lot of stuff has not been digitized.
Yes.
But they are foundational to the topic, to the theme. And that's something that we are not reducing the value of at all.
Yeah.
At all. So
but what has been digitized is a lot. And sifting through that is time consuming. So if these tools can help us do that and do that efficiently, I'm all for it.
But we still want to chat with the librarian and have a discussion as to what else there is. We don't want to miss a voice.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't digitized.
Yes.
Now, Keenious is another free tool that allows us, this one is interesting because it allows you to upload an article. It does allow for a search with prompt engineering, but it allows you to upload an article. So let's say I'm doing research, my supervisor or my collaborator said, hey, I found this. This could be a basis for a similar methodology or something like that. And we take the URL, the DOI, or the actual PDF file, and we could upload it to Keenious. Now, Keenious is going to give you a list of articles, again, relevant to this paper. But these topics, I don't want to say broader, or I'm trying not to be the marketing agent for this thing. But you know what? Try it out. Upload the paper and see what it gives you in terms of the bird's eye view.
Yeah.
How contrary are the views or how closely supportive are the views? But I think it's a good starting point especially as not for students.
Yeah.
For students, because I'm thinking it's more than likely a student who's going to find these host of papers because they're just going to jump on the World Wide Web and search, and they're going to have all these papers.
Yeah.
But they may not read all of the papers. But
Definitely not.
But there might be this one student who's chatting with the supervisor, and the supervisor says, "You see this one?" Because they see the author of it, and they know that voice is very heavy, and they said, "Use this one as your guide." I think this is where Keenious could come in. You upload that into the platform, and it would pull up the relevant ones. To me, one of the frustrating things when I was doing my graduate research was reading an article and realizing that the voice was, I wasted time.
Yeah.
I wasted time. So you have probably 100 and something citations when you finish your research, but then I'm sure that there are probably another 50 that you could not have cited at the end of it. But you spent time reading those 50.
Well, I mean, that's all part of the process, or was part of the process. Maybe AI can help us be more efficient in that aspect.
Yeah.
No, but I think you brought up a good point there, which I just want to highlight, and that is, in academic research, the role of the supervisor really is to guide the student. And I think we have to, especially now that the student can just go on the internet and be completely inundated with information, I think we have to make sure that we are communicating with our students to what are the key papers, the iconic papers of a field that they must read, and I think that's going to become a very important sort of guiding principle for supervisor, or continue to be.
As I'm not going to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last week we were going to discuss tool number 6, Undermind. Undermind. Now, Undermind uses it's more of a refiner, so you can refine your research questions, again, find relevant papers. The interface is, again, similar to ChatGPT and the other LLMs. But you can ask it questions and keep refining prompts. And it's going to show, again, the papers that match the topic, match the question. It's going to give you the number of citations relevant to that paper. So, again, who are the heavy voices. And you can use checkboxes or filters at the top of it's being displayed. Yeah, so at the top of the results page, and you can filter the articles with the highest number of citations, the most recent. You can do a timeline, again, similar to what we've discussed earlier. So these are just some of the tools that we're looking at for literature searches and literature review. And we don't also want to miss the point that since these are text tools or LLMs and generating tools, that it's something we can use to refine our questionnaires or survey instruments too.
Yeah.
Ever thought of, suppose a student comes now with well, we've seen that actually when ChatGPT just came out, that a person did an entire research. Well, ChatGPT did an entire research for a person.
Yeah.
But it is a tool that we can use in refining our research instrument. So let's say I'm doing some research in, my field. So here's where I'm going. The use of podcasts in learner engagement, or where now do I find that material? I type it in one of these tools, I go through it, and then I'm trying to figure out, so for how many podcasts, how many viewers have I had? I'm going to find these viewers. How am I going to find them? What am I going to ask them? I start to dream what I'm going to ask them.
Yeah.
And then now I can go back to HeyGen, to GPTs, to all the LLMs and ask, what would be some of the questions? Here's what I came up with. What do you think?
Yeah.
And we can have that healthy debate from another that would give us some kind of guide in moving forward. So it's just simple tools.
Yeah.
But that's the ground, the foundation of research. Now into the meat of it, the data analysis.
Yeah.
The data analysis. I want to hear your experience with this part.
So AI is rapidly transforming my field. That is genomics and precision medicine. And the reason for that is because it's actually, this is a perfect application of AI. So genomics is concerned with reading and understanding and gaining insights from the genomes of organisms. And our genomes are essentially instruction booklets for what makes us who we are. But it's not just what's written in our genomes, it's how our genes are expressed, how our cells respond to different environments, and so on. So if you think about health and what constitutes our health, it's what's in your genetics, what's in your environment, what's in your interactions, all the things you put in and on your body, what we eat, etc., the air we breathe. And all of those bits of information combined produce our health state, right? Whether we're very healthy or not, whether we're developing cancer, whether we're developing some other disease. And so if you really think about it, trying to understand all of that, what's at the core there is we have massive amounts of information, like terabytes and terabytes of digital data. And we need to make sense of that. Now, there's no way that a human can sit and look through all of that data. If I were to read a human genome, it's 3.2 billion letters long, right? You just can't, that's not something you write down in your lab notebook and start, trying to make sense of. So we have to use computer science to start to analyze this. And AI is really, really good at looking at vast amounts of data and drawing insight from that data, finding interesting connections, finding interesting associations. And that actually really helps us to generate new hypotheses from these data. So we have vast amounts of data. We don't know what it all means. It's just too much to process for us. But the AI can pick out interesting patterns in that, interesting associations, interesting connections. And then we can build on those. We can say, oh, okay, that's an interesting avenue to look at. So I can give you a couple of examples because I know I'm speaking quite abstractly. So, for example, I had a PhD student a couple of years ago, Kim Vidal, and she was really interested in cancer research and understanding radiation therapy and its effects. So radiation therapy does not work for every cancer patient. It works really well for some and not well for others. And she was trying to figure out what are some of the factors that drive this difference, right? So what she did was she took a bunch of clinical data from our patients, which we had digitized. We had genomic data, and we had demographic data. So it was basically just a lot of data about a lot of patients. And she used machine learning algorithms to see if she could separate that data into those people who responded really well to radiation therapy and those people who did not. And then ask the question, when you separate into those two groups, what are the factors that one group has that the other doesn't? And because we were not looking at a single factor, we were looking at all of their health data, all of their clinical data, all of their genetic data. It was too much to look at factor by factor. So we were looking, across a vast amount of data. And she was able to figure out and actually then develop further machine learning algorithms that were predicting, if you gave it a patient and all this information about a single patient, it would predict how well that patient would respond to that therapy. And that is at the heart of what we're calling precision medicine. That is, can we take all of this data that we can now measure about an individual, our genome, how our genes are expressed, the environment we live in, the chemicals in and around us, and can we use that to then predict the health outcome of that patient?
That's interesting.
It is, and I think it's a field that's growing quickly just because we have so much access to this kind of data.
And I think, quite frankly, it's even more interesting that it's being done right here.
Yeah.
That work
if
like
we
that
had electronic medical records, Ministry of Health, that would make things so much easier. No, but seriously, if we had electronic medical records, we would be able to do so much. We would be able to gain so much insights from our public health system and find out a lot about the health of our population.
But in a sense, it's kind of moving along with the curve. So we're moving from pre-literacy to being literate. And the good thing is, it's like a car. You have a vehicle. We went from combustion engines. We're at electric. Nobody decided I'm going to walk to work from Point Fortin.
Yeah.
Nobody's going back to that. And we're acknowledging that AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, in conversations like these, we're seeing that hopefully AI could pull all the other players forward.
Yeah.
So a simple thing as digitizing records and databases that we have the information available to be used
Yes.
is something that we could see as a beneficial outcome
Yeah.
of introducing AI. I'm not selling it wholesale.
It's
But-
good for hypothesis generation, right? Especially if you have vast amounts of data and you're not sure what is the right question to ask of this data. Or there could be many, many questions you can ask of the same data set. And nowadays we are experiencing massive data sets in many different fields.
Correct.
And so you're not just going to ask one question and be done with that data. You could actually ask many different questions of that data. And the AI is really good at kind of reviewing that data and finding patterns and then making interesting connections.
Correct.
So I think in that sense, it's a really great hypothesis generator that can then tell us, okay, we think these two things are associated or these two things are connected. Let's go and see if we could actually find the mechanism by how they are connected. And that, then generates a whole new direction for the research.
And that's kind of similar to what we discussed with consensus.
Yeah.
Because it does highlight those similarities and differences. And I think one of the things I like with it is that it also shows you papers that have, if you did the right prompt engineering, papers that have a methodology similar to what you're trying to do.
Yes.
And I think that...
And then you just replicate that on your data set, right?
Right. So it's a guide. It's a starting point as a guide. And of course, because it's not fully hallucinated or generated randomly, but you have the semantic scholar databases that is drawing from, it's a valid guide.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's increasing reproducibility. I'm
glad we're having this conversation because exactly that is something I tell my students to do a lot because we are concerned with Caribbean data, but studies like these have been done in other populations. So going out there and finding the methodology, the most cutting edge way to do this is something that I ask all of my students to do.
Yeah.
And so, this is. I didn't think about using a tool for that, but sure.
So it's not just about doing research to write a paper and get it done or to finish the project, but it's about understanding how, as a researcher, I could improve my research competency.
Yeah.
And knowing where I'm going to devote my time and my effort, my brain power.
Yeah.
And speaking of brain power, just to go a little further into the actual data analysis, I really enjoyed that experience that you used there. And I am always trying, we here at Settle, we are kind of mandated to keep at the forefront of
and we appreciate
those
it because lecturers don't have time to.
Exactly. So we have been trying out to see, I'm comparing these AI tools for data analysis.
Yeah.
So we have the long time, now traditional SPSS, R, Python, those things that we can use. But then I said, okay, let's see if ChatGPT is any good at this thing. And I was shocked that it was able to do analysis of both quantitative and qualitative data separately.
Yeah.
So I did an entire prompt with it and ran through a set of quantitative data. And while I'm saying this, please be mindful of another limitation of AI, the concept of data security and privacy issues. So you have to understand that different AI platforms have servers located in different places. So if you put in the wrong information, your information is going to be there. It's going to be theirs as well. So if you're testing out something, all well and good, but be mindful of what you're going to actually use it for when it's crunch time. So I used it, and it was shockingly, interestingly accurate. I looked at SPSS, I looked at what I did in Excel, and I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we're not saying it's to just quickly get the thing done, the research and data analysis done. But the student or the user still has to be the critical thinker of drawing the conclusions from the data and the findings. What does this mean? The human element could never be replaced.
Yeah.
Could never be replaced. They've tried to remove the drivers from cars nowadays in different lands, and it doesn't always work out. And it's the same thing. We must have a driver for each of these tools. Another interesting tool that I've come across for data analysis is Excel AI. So it's kind of like a built-in, I wouldn't say plugin, but a tool that's actually in the toolbar.
Yeah.
But I think it's only for Excel 19 and later, version 19 and later. I could be wrong. I stand corrected. But again, very interesting. Click of a button, data analysis, similar to SPSS, of course.
Yeah.
But I like to triangulate these things to compare, to see who's doing what, who is stronger in what, in a sense. Because for me, it kind of makes my life easier now when I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to use that one and make my decisions. So it's good to mess around, to play.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Of course, once we have the time for it, make the time for it and do it. Because in the long term, we're going to save ourselves the time.
Yeah.
And we could devote that time to something else.
I think, the great thing about it too is that we can play in like 5-10 minutes and just kind of get a feel for it. It doesn't, it seems like the high barrier to entry, but it's really not. You can just play around, and maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. As long as you said you're not using your critical data.
Yes.
But, I don't know. I aim for playful experimentation over perfection.
I like that.
And we see,
I don't know.
see where it takes us in 5-10 minutes, not for hours on end.
That's very true. Because we can play, but then we still need to synthesize and critically think about the research, the actual data. And it really shows, again, the concept of, as we move through the research process, how we have, when you really think of it, the last few stages, you now have a lot of time for that if we use the tools correctly. What I also like about AI as far as research goes, and of course, the broader use of AI, is that it has introduced a new sense of equity that didn't exist before. And that means that users have access to information that they could not necessarily have accessed in the past. That would have required subscriptions or a physical library that sat overseas or something like that. And I think it's nice to see that we now have a level playing field.
Yeah.
So the Ivy League institutions, data that they have access to, we also can touch and see. And
to some extent, I mean, we still have to think about, who owns data and all of that. But yes, I agree. It is democratizing our access.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And once we're thinking about who owns the data, it makes me immediately need to plug in that if we have used AI in the research process, we want to be purely transparent.
Yeah.
And that is a key factor in AI literacy in research. You need to be transparent and acknowledge the use of AI. Different publications have different requirements in terms of acknowledgement. How specific you need to be or how broad you can be, or even if it's a grad student, you need to keep your supervisor informed pretty much.
Yeah.
You need to keep them informed. So I think the considerations are there. Academic integrity, we're going to shortly summarize that by simply saying, if you have used AI, please do not just copy and paste.
Yeah.
The AI tools that we discussed are to gather the information that you still have to read.
Yeah.
You still have, the only way you're going to be the expert in the field is if you personally know the gaps, the key speakers, and those key factors. Don't expect that you're going to finish a paper and be able to speak on it if you've purely used AI without any human critical thinking, that human element.
Yeah.
So be transparent, be playful. Could you repeat it? I got pieces.
Playful experimentation over perfection.
That's it. Playful experimentation over perfection. So we encourage those things. We encourage the responsible use of AI.
Yeah.
And I think this morning's conversation has definitely, hopefully, hinted toward that and covered that despite highlighting tools that we have used in the past or that we have come across, we want to make sure that when we mention these things, be mindful that our learners know them already, but they may not know how to use them in a responsible manner. So what would be your final advice to learners, to students, or to an academic?
I mean, I think that sums it up. Playful experimentation over perfection. Try it out. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. But also just be keenly aware of, the background that the AI is using, because it's very good at analyzing vast amounts of data, but, it's up to us humans to chart the course to decide what are the questions we want to ask, what are the questions worth investigating, where should we be spending money, financing projects, right? What's going to be helpful to humanity. Or to our slice of humanity. So, we really have to still be very much involved in setting the agenda. But I think from all you've heard, I've learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm definitely going to try some of these tools myself.
Yeah, and that's fantastic advice. I'm glad that you mentioned those things, and we want to encourage persons to stay true to themselves.
Yeah.
And a big part of staying true to yourself is not removing yourself from the research.
Yeah.
So don't use the AI to replace your critical thinking, synthesizing skills. Please don't do that. That's the main thing.
I also want to add one more thing. So I actually really like writing. I enjoy the process, and it's something that brings me joy. It's something that makes me feel accomplished when I produce something that I'm very proud to see on a piece of paper. And yes, some of these AIs, generative AIs can write for us. I've tried some of them, and I haven't been, while they do a reasonable job, it doesn't sound like me. It doesn't have the tone that I want. It doesn't have the creative aspect. And then I don't really feel any sense of accomplishment at the end of it. So in some cases, that might be fine. I might just be trying to get something done and, moving past it. Right. But especially for academics, where writing is one of our main ways of expressing ourselves, I think, don't let the AI take the joy out of it. Yeah. Still make time to do the things that you find value in.
Exactly. It's a powerful ally.
Yes.
It's an ally, and we want to use it as an ally. Now, we know that our university has acknowledged the ethical framework for use of AI in research, and that sits on the website. We also have the UNESCO guidelines on ethics and use of AI in teaching and learning. So we want to be mindful of those things. Be playful experimentation over perfection. That's what we're going with today.
Yeah.
Dr. Haraksing, it was a pleasure chatting with you this morning.
Thank you for having me. My first podcast.
That's lovely. We never think that. And we really enjoyed having you. We enjoyed your experience with it and your insights, your advice. And we look forward, listeners, to our next episode of Podclass, which would be coming soon. But stay tuned. Follow us, like, subscribe, please, to our channel to keep updated with our latest content. Who knows what snippets might lie there. And Dr. Haraksing, thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, keep innovating and playfully experiment over seeking perfection. Dr. Haraksing, thank you. Thank you for joining us for today's Podclass, the podcast that explores various themes in the scholarship of teaching and learning in higher education. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can check out the links and resources in the show notes for more information. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.